Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Bee Study Vlogs. This is episode 2, and if you're new here, I compete in the National Bible Bee Summer Study, and in this video and a few more over the summer, I'm going to be explaining how I study. So if a competition like that interests you, you can go check out the link right here because registration closes on May 31st. And now let's get into the video. Today I'm going to be talking about how I go through the Discovery Journal and study it, and then how I'll review it later. So I think first I'm going to get my Discovery Journal and study materials out and start working on my lesson, and then I'll be back for some tips on how I do it. Alright, so I'm working on Unit 3, Lesson 4, and I just went through and did the Navigate section, and it took me almost 8 minutes. I would definitely say to read through the passages that it tells you to read through and mark the keywords, highlight them like it says, because you just get a better understanding of the passage. Because imagine you went to the Discovery Journal and you didn't read this study passage when it tells you to. You could get to the end of the Discovery Journal and barely have read it at all. And if you're interested in how I study the book of James, I have another video on my channel about that, so you can go check it out. So a couple things that I want to point out about how I study the Discovery Journal is that when you're going through it, you can look carefully at the cross-references that are listed. So for example, I have my cross-reference list right here, and it's really handy to keep it by me when I'm going through the Discovery Journal. And then at the end of a lesson, I will look through and see which cross-references are on the official list. So for example, let's do that right now for this lesson. I would normally write them on my computer, but since that's not out right now, I will do that in a few minutes. A lot of them aren't always on the list, but there might be like 4, maybe sometimes more, on both. I don't think there's gonna be too many today. I've not found many yet. So total, there were only 3 cross-references, and so I normally study those right after doing the lesson, and so I'm gonna do that in a few minutes, but I'm not really going to talk about how I study the cross-references today because that's going to be in a different video, so you can be keeping an eye out for that. I will also be making my Quizlet set to review the lesson, and basically for that I just go through and rewrite the lesson but in question format, and they normally come out to about 30 question sets on Quizlet, and my username is this right here, so you can find all of the senior Discovery Journal reviews that I've done so far on that username. As far as how fast you go through the Discovery Journal, it kind of depends on the person, how much time you have to spend on it, and how interested you are in getting it done super fast. So far, I'm just doing 1 lesson a day because I know that I got my Discovery Journal so early and I don't want to get burnt out yet. But later, probably in June, starting June 1st maybe, I will start doing 2 lessons a day. If you're looking at your Discovery Journal and thinking, I want to study on paper, but I cannot do that with the word studies that are in here and all of the verses, it's hard to flip through my Bible to 10 different references. The way that I do it is I just go through the lesson with just my Bible and answer the questions that I can. If it's just a few verses, I'll look them up in my Bible, but if it's a lot, I'll save that whole section for when I get on my computer, and then when I'm on my computer, I'll put the verses into Blue Letter Bible's multiverse retrieval and pull them up that way, and that's an easy way to answer the questions from them. And then I will do the word studies and everything, so initially without a computer, and then I will come back to my computer to do the rest of the lesson, and that's helpful because then I can transition easily into studying my cross-references and making my Quizlet set. Now I'm going to work on making my Quizlet set for the lesson and see how long it takes me, and then I will explain how I study and review the Discovery Journal later in the summer once I've gone through it all. And now that we've talked about how we actually do the Discovery Journal, Imagine that you finish your discovery journal in the middle of June and you're wondering now, how should I review it so that I don't forget it by the time of the test, but also focus on verses and the study passage and maybe even the early release? My favorite ways to review are going through Quizlet sets, like the one I just made, but like the whole discovery journal combined. Other people also make Quizlet sets. You don't just have to use mine, maybe you want to make your own, but just using a Quizlet set to go through is really helpful, and you can really study that any mode of Quizlet that you want to. Maybe write, that's my favorite, or learn, or flashcards, really anything. And if you don't like using Quizlet, there's a lot of study games, and you can just see if you can find a full discovery journal review on there and play it over and over and over again. That works as well. Another way to review the discovery journal is obviously just reading through it, paying attention to the questions, what you put down as the answers, maybe checking something if it doesn't really make sense anymore. If I was to read through the discovery journal again, which I hopefully will be doing later in the summer, I wouldn't be reading through each of the cross references that it tells me. I would just be reading through its questions and its answers, and then moving on. It doesn't need to be going through the discovery journal again, it just needs to be a review. I haven't done this too much in the past, but other people make some review sheets for themselves on Google Docs or whatever, and they will put all the Greek words from a lesson, all the cross references, maybe the cross reference summaries, and then they can print it out or just have it on their computer of a whole review sheet, but way more condensed than the discovery journal, and that also seems like a pretty good method. At least in previous years, the discovery journal has definitely been a big part of the test, so having a good grasp on the content inside of it is really important. The way that you choose to review doesn't really matter as long as you're getting really familiar with the discovery journal. Also, when I'm reading through the discovery journal, sometimes later in the summer, I will use a highlighter and highlight things that I think are really important or that I often miss or didn't notice in the first time going through it. Also, when I'm going through the discovery journal later in the summer, I will normally have a piece of paper next to me or a Google Doc and write down the page numbers or something about the lessons that I don't feel very confident on. If you were to ask me questions from a certain chart and I know I wouldn't be able to answer them, I'll write down work on this chart, and then I can go through and focus in on specific parts of the discovery journal that I don't feel very good on. And with that being said, I'm going to close out this video. I still have to study my cross references. If you have any questions or comments on this video, let me know in the comments below. And if this video was helpful, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!